Dan Andrews resigns. Australia's most ruthless state premier steps down, this time without breaking his back.
Canadian PM Justin Trudeau publicly accuses India of murder after being snubbed by Prime Minister Modi at the G20 meeting.
An obligatory update on Russia and Ukraine with a twist. We find a few other conflicts to talk about that aren't receiving around-the-clock coverage.
And US police celebrate a job well done after finally arresting someone over the 1996 murder of rapper Tupac.
Presenting a news revolution from the top drawer down. Information News Network with Brian Sockington and Sandy Hosier.
And stay tuned to INN for Joe Sockic's Sports Wrap.
And Jane Bunyan with her annual springtime weather forecast.
Cut to the first story, please. Cut to the first story. Put the logo up. Brian! Brian! We're on the air! Brian!
Can we have that music turned off, please? Who left that on? Sorry, after 9 years in office as Premier of Victoria, Australia, Dan Andrews has announced his immediate resignation, despite his election promise to serve his third term in full, handing the reins of power over to his hand-picked deputy and fellow Socialist faction member Jacinta Allen. When asked about the decision, Andrews said,
I said I'd stay, now I'm not. Yeah, and it was true then, and I've changed my mind.
A typical response from the Teflon-coated man, but a shock to many who'd assumed he'd rule over Victoria for all of eternity. Heartbroken media shills, including PR Guy and Dan Fangirl, momentarily forced to find some true meaning in their lives, before quickly pivoting to 24/7 advocacy of Labour's voice referendum. Andrews was Labour's longest-serving Victorian Premier, and his departure begs the question, who could possibly want to fill his shoes? I certainly wouldn't want to be the sock puppet to do that, as Victoria faces an upcoming financial crisis. But at least none of us will have to sit through another Commonwealth Games, which comes as a relief to INN sports reporter Joe Sockick, who put together the following tribute highlighting Dan's greatest moments.
Oh, hi. I'm INN sport reporter Joe Sockick, and I'm thrilled to be here to pay tribute to the one and only Dan Michael Andrews. If politics were a sport, I think it'd be boxing, and Dan would be its prized fighter. High stakes, tough to watch, heaps of fun when you have weak opposition, and a little bit dodgy behind the scenes. So join me as I take a look back through some of the greatest knockout moments of Dan's long political career. Dan was a man of the people. As long as you were a digital person or invited to one of his controlled press conferences, he transitioned Victorian political discourse from public appearances and TV and radio interviews into the age of social media, where Dan's 1.5 million followers, more than every other state premier combined, received his carefully crafted media releases daily, and used the I Stand With Dan hashtag, with help from accounts like these, to encourage his followers to call anyone with opposing views cookers and right-wing extremists. Dan kicked off his premiership by spending $1.1 billion on not building the previous government's infrastructure projects, promising better and more expensive ones, like Melbourne's airport rail link. Unfortunately, that one didn't happen, but we did get the start of a suburban rail loop in the wealthy eastern suburbs that might even link to the airport one day. Level train crossings were removed en masse, for just $8.3 billion. Luckily, Dan sold the Port of Melbourne to the Chinese, which helped pay for it. He promised to increase affordable housing and decrease taxation, and absolutely delivered, just the wrong way round. He promised to bring back state-owned electricity to lower costs and localised profits, and then immediately opened the idea to overseas investors before it stalled completely, along with the 59,000 jobs it was supposed to create. He promised to ban natural gas while cooking on his stovetop, and he promised to ban smoking outside and stop big tobacco advertising while having a dart outside a speaking function. He also promised better ambulance times and 4,000 ICU beds during COVID. Unfortunately, those promises never happened either. And then there was his big re-election promise to bring the 2026 Commonwealth Games to rural Victoria for the bargain price of just $2.6 billion. Only $1 billion more than Birmingham, England spent in 2022. And now they're bankrupt. But that didn't stop Dan getting the money from taxpayers, riding the excitement into an election win, and then calling a press conference and cancelling the games. He had no choice, of course, claiming the budget had blown out to $7 or more billion. And then he just turned around and walked away. Dan kept Victorians safe during the pandemic, despite a higher death count than anywhere else in Australia, by simply removing freedoms and right to work in the 262-day longest and often harshest lockdown on planet Earth, featuring these innovative strategies. Andrews was always so busy working for the people, he couldn't remember who put cheap security in charge of hotel quarantine, which led to an outbreak that killed over 700 people. He was fined twice for not wearing a face mask in public, while he was walking to a press conference to tell people to wear face masks in public. He did 120 straight days of tinkering with the lives of 6.7 million people.
Is everybody right to go?
You will no longer be able to leave homes. We can no longer have people simply out and about. You won't be able to go to the pub because the pub is shut. That doesn't mean you can have all your mates round to home and get on the beers. There will be a curfew across metropolitan Melbourne from 8 p.m. this evening, and it will run from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. each and every day. Being bored is much better than being in intensive care. 9 public housing towers will be the subject of a complete lockdown for no good reason whatsoever.
When state emergency powers were set to expire, he just wrote up new laws to continue them. And when they weren't passed in Parliament the first time, he got in the ear of these 4, who conveniently changed their vote, and now the government can call a pandemic whenever it wants. There were some difficult times. In 2013, Dan and his wife were struck by a dangerous push bike riding kid who T-boned their large SUV, causing horrific inconvenience to both of them, and some life-threatening injuries to the kid. Luckily, police forgot to perform their mandatory duty of breath testing those at the scene. And an ambulance report forgot not to say that their car had in fact ploughed into the bike at 60 kilometres an hour. When Dan wanted things done, he got things done. And his big build came with a big price tag. The state's clocked up $171 billion in debt, more than any other state in the country. And it's expected to blow out to $239 billion by 2026. That's why he did everything to keep money coming in, even bypassing federal advice and secretly signing a memorandum of understanding with the Chinese Communist Party's Belt and Road Initiative. While he was Premier, Daniel Andrews' salary increased to $441,000, the highest in the country. And he earned every cent, considering the stress of being involved in 5 separate IBAC anti-corruption hearings. But Andrews was a master of plausible deniability, and while his own ministers were found guilty of breaching parliamentary codes of conduct, misusing public funds for branch stacking operations, spending $388,000 of public funds to pay electoral officers to wear Labor-branded red shirts in marginal seats, and improperly influencing the awarding of contracts related to land sales, fire unions, health, education.
All right, Joe, wrap it up. Enough's enough, mate.
Yeah, I'm almost done. Anyway, despite a 12-month police investigation and the state ombudsman report describing his government's conduct as absolutely disgraceful and a catalogue of unethical and inappropriate behaviours, Dan Andrews wasn't charged, so on and on he went until the day he resigned. The pudgy, geeky career
Take him off.
politician described by his
Pull
own
him off the
colleagues
air.
as a ruthless, relentless, arrogant
Take him
bully.
off.
By golly, what a champion. I don't know about you, but I feel like I've been knocked out after watching that. You gotta admire a bloke who can take all those punches and still come out on top. He bows out as a legend of the sport of politics and will be one tough act to follow. But I wonder if retirement will make him consider the damage he's done through his career. What am I talking about? Of course it won't. Well, I hope you've had as much fun as I've had, and until next time, I've been Joe Sockick, and you've been watching my tribute to Dan, the Teflon-coated man, Andrews. Bye-bye now.
That was an interesting tribute there. You don't really think Joe's one of those cookers, do you?
No, I don't think so. I thought it was fairly balanced. I wasn't really listening, actually.
Well, at least those awful level crossings were removed.
Yes, those level crossings were removed.
Yep. And weren't they dangerous?
The level crossings?
Yeah.
Yes, it was certainly great to see them removed. Great work.
It's not every day a world leader publicly accuses a foreign government of murder.
Murder?
Yes, murder. And that's just what Canada's Justin Trudeau did in front of his Parliament House recently, reigniting some long-forgotten tensions with India and putting Canada back in the news for the first time since Montreal won the Stanley Cup in 1993.
Wait, hold on. That Canadian trucker convoy that protested the COVID mandates made the news back in 2022. And that was before their bank accounts were frozen.
Oh, yes, but we don't talk about that, do we, Brian?
Nah, she's right. We don't talk about that, Brian.
Yes. Right.
Anyway, Trudeau alleged that the Indian government was linked to the recent assassination of Sikh separatist Hardeep Singh Nayar, which was swiftly denounced by Indian delegates as absurd and politically motivated. But as luck would have it, a meeting between Justin Trudeau and Ukrainian Super President Volodymyr Zelensky in Canadian Parliament was expected to relieve some of the pressure on the Liberal Party leader. But Trudeau has a knack for the gaffe and was about to experience one of the more spectacular frying pan to the fire moments in political history.
Canada, the Great White North. A land of friendship, goodwill and tolerance, where citizens are so tolerant they simply won't tolerate anyone who doesn't tolerate everyone. Where men are men and other men are women. Where citizens are encouraged to be in formation with each other. And leading the charge is its progressive and revolutionary Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, the progeny of strong, influential leaders of the past. His father, beloved former Canadian Prime Minister Pierre, his mother, the glamorous activist Margaret, and his father, Cuban dictator Fidel Castro. Perhaps it was destiny that the boxing, acting, feminist, party-loving cosplayer was sent to transform the land of maple syrup into a beacon of left-wing policy, steadily correcting Canada's backward past to build back better. INN's The Drudge checked in on Canada's soaring environmental, social and governance value over Trudeau's 8 years in power, and their stocks are looking up. But recently, the 51-year-old has discovered that wearing big boy pants on the global stage isn't always easy, becoming embroiled in a diplomatic crisis with the world's largest democracy, India. Trudeau endured a frosty reception at the recent G20 Leaders Summit in Delhi, where he was mostly ignored and then dressed down by several leaders, including Prime Minister Modi, before being made to wait 2 days to leave Delhi airport due to mysterious technical issues found aboard his private plane. Just 1 week later, Trudeau would have his revenge, accusing the Indian government of being complicit in the June murder of Canadian Sikh separatist Hardeep Singh Nayar, who had influenced a Canadian revival of the Khalistan movement for Sikh independence, considered a terrorist organisation in India since the Sikh murder of former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in 1984 and the bombing of an Air India flight by Canadian Sikhs in 1985. But Trudeau's accusation was quickly dismissed and labelled absurd by the Modi government, a statement made somewhat easier by the complete absence of any evidence or support from Five Eyes intelligence allies. Thankfully, Trudeau's immunity to embarrassment would help him again just days later, when fellow Liberal MP and House Speaker Anthony Rota invited 98-year-old Yaroslav Hunka to Canadian Parliament, who was honoured by receiving 2 standing ovations in the House, including from Trudeau and his special guest Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, despite Hunka having served alongside Nazis during World War II. In his apology 5 days later, Trudeau said he was troubled that the era had fueled Russian propaganda, an opportunity to respond that Russian President Vladimir Putin couldn't refuse.
Абсолютно отвратительным выглядит то, что все аплодировали этому нацисту. Если спикер канадского парламента говорит о том, что во время Второй мировой войны этот канадский сражался против русских во время Второй мировой войны, он не может не понимать, что он сражался на стороне Гитлера, то он идиот. Называет его героем Украины и героем Канады, то он негодяй. Или так, или так.
So while many continue to view Canada as the friendly, modest, hockey-loving place we used to know, Trudeau and his government are busy ensuring his nation is making the news for all kinds of new and exciting reasons. All publicity is good publicity, as the saying goes, and if Trudeau can generate this much attention in under 1 month, imagine what he's still capable of doing in the 49 months he has to go before the next Canadian election in October 2025. James Plushfoot, INN News.
Over a year and a half on from Russia and Ukraine's highly publicized war, and objectives are finally being met, as the global military-industrial complex emerges as the clear winner, the cost of missiles blowing out to these staggering numbers. Ukrainian progress is emerging, apparently. The much-anticipated spring offensive has begun, supposedly, after months of speculation. Exactly how the billions of dollars of international military aid is being used is obviously still a trade secret, but thankfully this top Russian commander was taken off the battlefield, although he did seem to return in this video posted shortly after the announcement. So while the world waits for a resolution to the war, we thought we'd remind INN viewers that there are other conflicts continuing around the world, even though they aren't being covered by the mainstream news. We start in Africa, where fighting continues in these countries. Highlights include the coup d'etat that occurred in Niger, where a military junta placed President Mohamed Bazoum under house arrest further weakening Western influence in the area and extending the global war on terror that President Obama ended in 2010 and again in 2013.
To the Americas, where deadly conflicts continue in Colombia, Peru, and Mexico, mostly involving far-left Maoist extremists and drug cartels. So considering mainstream news sponsors, it's no wonder these stories aren't getting a look in. But on a positive note, Mexican authorities did capture the son of drug kingpin El Chapo earlier this year, but not before an epic Quentin Tarantino-esque shootout that killed 29 people, injured about 35 others, burnt vehicles and brought down 2 aircraft.
Over to the Asia-Pacific region, where the weather is great, but not so much your chances of staying alive, as insurgencies continue in Afghanistan, India, Indonesia, Myanmar, Pakistan, the Philippines, and Thailand.
And now to Europe and the Middle East, the undisputed joint champions of fighting, as conflicts continue in Armenia and Azerbaijan, Egypt, Iran, Syria, Turkey, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, and of course the perennial war between Israel and Palestine that seems to be heating up. It reminds us of just how lucky we are to live in countries where our media and governments are only destroying our minds and wallets.
That's what we pay for peace. Hi Joe, I hear the Spanish women's soccer coach is in a little hot water over some celebration antics. But let's start with what you know about preparations for the Paris Olympics in 2024.
Yeah, there's about 10 months until the start of the Games, and Paris is already sweeping their streets clean for the event. Starting with their homeless, of course, which has become a bit of an Olympic tradition in modern times. Starting back in Sydney, I believe, when the New South Wales government dropped $1.2 million to rid the harbour city of its homeless. Thousands were bussed up to 200 kilometres away to Wollongong or Newcastle, a feat worthy of a gold medal. At least that's what Sydney's Lord Mayor Frank Sarter thought at the time.
Shine lights on them to make life uncomfortable, but they'll only move to another hole somewhere else. We can't afford to be a world city with fireworks and the Olympics without showing we're dealing with our problem of homeless on the streets.
I'm pretty sure he got the idea from the '96 Games in Atlanta. Athens and Tokyo did the same, and I think the Chinese homeless in Beijing removed themselves rather than deal with their local authorities. Anyway, on to sports wrap for September. Well, as Brian mentioned, Spanish women's soccer coach George Vilda has been sacked. Just 2 weeks after President of Spanish soccer Luis Rubiales, a completely different person mind you, smooched player Jenny Hermoso without her explicit consent, after the Spaniards beat England to win the World Cup. Of course, the world went into meltdown over this, many condemning the kiss as sexual violence, demanding the book be thrown at the president and anyone who didn't immediately denounce the kiss. Even jail time's been suggested. I suppose we'll have to do something about those fancy Europeans and how they've been greeting people for the last 200 years as well. It's a new day, ladies and gentlemen. Germany won its first basketball World Cup, defeating the talented Serbian team 83-77 in the big one. But of course, the dream team from the USA made all the headlines for losing to Germany in the semi-final and then again to their neighbours to the north as Canada won the bronze, its first FIBA medal. America's Coco Gauff took the US Open women's singles title, her first major, defeating Arina Sabalenka in the final. Novak Djokovic beat Daniil Medvedev and equalled the world record with his 24th Grand Slam, tied only with the great Margaret Court for both Grand Slam wins and most hated person for having opinions while playing tennis. However, his incredible sporting achievement wasn't quite noteworthy enough to feature on Wikipedia's news portal for September, but we thought we'd sneak it in here. And a new NHL season kicks off with Mike Babcock resigning as head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets before coaching a game. The NHL Players Association are investigating an incident in which the legendary 60-year-old coach implemented old-school methods such as asking players to share phone photos and rating each other's performance in team meetings. Scumbag. Yep, it's a new day, Babcock. You just have to learn or leave, mate. Hockey players might have punched each other for fun back in your day, but sport teams are safe spaces now. And whether you're punching someone or making them feel uncomfortable, it's all violence and it needs to be called out. Leave the coaching to the experts, bud. You know, the sports psychologists and statisticians. Over to my girl Jane Bunyan with the weather.
It's springtime, and that means it's time for Jane Bunyan's annual long-term weather forecast. What have you got for us this year, Jane? Thanks, Sans. It's always a treat to put my meteorology degree to the test each and every spring, and I've got a blockbuster forecast covering the next 6 months in Australia. Hot and toasty temperatures make up the bulk of predictions for this spring, unfortunately, as you can see from these very ominous-looking charts from the Bureau, showing the likelihood of a 60 to 80% or more chance of temperatures exceeding medium maximums in the near future. For example, between October and December, Australia will be 3 times more likely to experience unusually high temperatures, which the BOM defines as temperatures equating to the warmest 20% of October to December periods between 1981 and 2018.
Jane, I think I've lost you there. Does the red part of the map mean it's going to be hotter than usual? Or?
Well, if you take the temperatures from that 37-year period and then find the hottest 20% of days that occurred in there, we're saying that we're at least 3 times more likely to experience those types of days again, with a 60 to 80% degree of certainty.
Goodness me! Is it time to throw away the raincoat and umbrella then?
No, not just yet, Sans. Remember, there's always a chance of some rain along the way, although these charts aren't very encouraging.
Are they as complicated as the last ones?
Well, yeah, but just focus on the colours, I reckon. Anyway, there's a hell of a lot of heat forecast after that, as La Nina brings some serious scorches in November. Tough times for those fluffy socks, so keep the deodorizers handy, especially you, Joe.
Hang on, what?
The December holiday weather patterns are looking very climate changey again, so expect supercharged storms, heavy rainfall, and obviously very dry conditions across the country. By February, there's a good chance we'll have descended into post-apocalyptic Mad Max-type conditions, and we advise everyone who can still find water to stay hydrated and well away from anyone wielding a flaming electric guitar. They look cool, but they really are very hot.
Thanks, Jane.
Thanks, Sandy. One of the only living witnesses to the 1996 drive-by shooting of Tupac Shakur has been indicted on the charge of the rapper's murder. Duane Keefe D. Davis was finally charged by Las Vegas police after just 27 years. The case was so cold, Ice Cube was considered a suspect.
Oh, geez, Sandy.
Oh, come on, it wasn't that bad. Anyway, a Nevada grand jury indicted Keefe D., the so-called shot caller for the Southside Compton Crips, for putting a hit on Tupac that resulted in someone busting a cap in his...
Whoa, wait, Sandy, listen, you're just not cut out for this kind of story.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right, does it?
No, look, I couldn't do it either, but I tell you who could. Bootliner.
Bootliner?
Yes, Cody Bootliner. He's young, cool, and an expert on, well, everything. I bet he could give us the straight dope, or whatever the kids say these days. Cody!
Yeah?
We need you to do this Tupac story.
Yep, I thought you might ask. I'm already on it, Brian. Just let me set the mood a little.
The mood?
Oh, don't worry, Sandy. Cody's an old-school gangster from way back.
Really?
Oh, yes. It's just one of his many talents. Cody, are you ready?
Yep, straight up, dog. kick it, the Drudge. Yo, listen up, Sock, I got the stanky truth. Cody Bootliner rhyming like a master sleuth. Back in 96, Vegas Strip, lights electric. Tupac was 25 in his prime, majestic. He's rolling down the strip with his boy Suge Knight when a white Cadillac pulls up at a light. Bang, bang, drive by, now the car's a mess. Even legends fall with 4 bullets in their chest. Nobody saw it, but everybody knew Tupac was no more. But this tale ain't through. East Coast, West Coast was about to repeat. 6 months, same thing. Biggie Smalls took the heat. Now it's almost 30 years since the 2 stars fell. But with zero arrest, it ain't just socks that smell. But if you're writing in your book that you killed a man, even cops that don't care gonna put you in the can. Peace.
He's good, isn't he?
Oh, an amazing talent, but where'd he go? I want his autograph.
I don't know. I heard a loud noise, though.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Oh, well, I just figured it was Cody, dropping the mic or something.
Me too. You don't think...
No, I don't know. Do you?
Guys, the lights just blew out in the green room. The Drudge! I thought I smelled something in here.
What up, dogs? Y'all been tuned to the illest news joint on the block. Biggie B here with my partner in rhyme, Little Ho.
That's right. Wait, what?
Yeah, Sandy Hosier, Little Ho. Oh,
Best we leave the street talking to the experts, Brian.
Yes, you might be right. But before we bounce, I need to rep our INN store where you can drop some dough on a subscription or a donation. Or peep the latest threads so you can style out information with your homies.
You're so bad at this, Brian.
That's just how I get down, fam. Deal with it. And remember, stay woke, keep hustling, and as always, may our news be your views. Catch y'all on the flip side.
Yeah, peace out, dudes.
No, they don't say dudes anymore.
Oh, what do they say?
Oh, well, I don't know, but they don't say dudes.